I never thought much about clowns before. They were just silly entertainers with big red noses and painted-on smiles. I would laugh and cheer as they performed their goofy routines, never giving a second thought to what might be lurking beneath the surface. That all changed one fateful night when I was walking home from a friend's house. It was late, and the streets were deserted. I was lost in my thoughts, enjoying the cool night air and the peaceful silence. Suddenly, I heard a rustling behind me. I turned around to see a clown standing there, a sinister smile on his painted face. My heart started racing as I tried to back away, but he was already advancing on me. I broke into a run, but he was fast, and he was right behind me. I could hear his ragged breathing and his low, guttural laughter. I didn't know what he wanted or why he was chasing me, but I knew that I needed to get away. I made it to my apartment complex and ran inside, slamming the door behind me. I leaned against the door, panting and trying to catch my breath. My heart was pounding in my chest, and I felt like I was going to pass out. For days afterwards, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had settled over me. Everywhere I looked, I saw clowns, on billboards, in movies, even in my dreams. I felt like I was being stalked, like someone was always watching me. One day, I was walking down the street when I saw a clown sitting on a park bench. He looked harmless enough, his makeup was bright and colorful, and he was juggling brightly colored balls. But as I got closer, I could see something in his eyes that made my blood run cold. He was watching me, and his smile was twisted and sinister. I tried to walk past him, but he stood up and started following me. I quickened my pace, but he just kept getting closer and closer. That's when I realized that the clowns weren't just figments of my imagination, they were real, and they were after me. I didn't know what they wanted or why they were targeting me, but I knew that I had to do something to protect myself. I started researching clowns, trying to understand what could be driving them to torment me. What I found was horrifying: stories of clowns luring children into the woods, of clowns attacking people in their homes, of clowns committing unspeakable acts of violence. I tried to tell my friends and family about what was happening to me, but no one believed me. They just laughed and told me that I was being paranoid. But I knew that I wasn't crazy, the clowns were real, and they were coming for me. I started carrying a weapon with me wherever I went, just in case. I avoided places where I knew clowns would be: circuses, carnivals, children's birthday parties. But no matter how hard I tried to stay away from them, they always seemed to find me. One night, I was home alone when I heard a noise outside my window. I cautiously approached the window and looked out, and there was a clown standing there, watching me with his dark, empty eyes. I tried to run, but he was already inside my apartment. He chased me through the rooms, his spindly fingers reaching for me. I was screaming and crying, but he just kept getting closer and closer. And then, just as he was about to grab me, I woke up. It was all just a nightmare, or at least, I thought it was. From that day on, I knew that I could never let my guard down. That I started having nightmares every night about clowns, dreams that were so vivid and terrifying that I would wake up drenched in sweat, my heart racing. I was becoming paranoid, always looking over my shoulder, always expecting to see a clown lurking in the shadows. I started researching more about the history of clowns and what could be behind this intense fear I was experiencing. I learned that in ancient times, clowns were actually used as a way to convey important messages or bring levity to serious situations. However, over time, the image of clowns had become distorted and they had taken on a darker connotation. I also read about a group of clowns known as creepy clowns, who were known to terrorize people in the streets at night. They would wear disturbing clown makeup and carry weapons, causing fear and panic wherever they went. It seemed that my worst fears were not unfounded. There really were clowns out there who wanted to hurt me. The more I learned about the history of clowns, the more convinced I became that there was something deeply sinister about them. One day, I received a package in the mail. It was a small, wooden box with a clown painted on the lid. I didn't know who it was from, but I immediately felt a sense of unease. I opened the box to find a clown doll inside, its twisted smile sending chills down my spine. That's when I realized that I was being watched, that someone was sending me these messages, trying to torment me. I felt like I was losing my mind, and I didn't know who to turn to for help. One night, as I was walking home from work, I saw a clown standing at the end of the street. I froze in my tracks, my heart pounding in my chest. The clown started walking towards me, and I knew that I had to get away. I started running, but the clown was faster. He chased me through the deserted streets, his laughter echoing through the darkness. I could feel his hot breath on the back of my neck, and I knew that I was running out of time. Just as I was about to give up, I saw a police car parked on the side of the road. I ran towards it, shouting for help. The clown disappeared into the shadows, but I knew that he would be back. From that day on, I was never the same. The fear of clowns had consumed me, and I was always on edge, always expecting to be attacked. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't function. The clowns had won, they had taken over my life and turned it into a living nightmare. I knew that I would never be able to escape their twisted grasp, and that the only way to survive was to stay one step ahead of them at all times. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months, but my fear of clowns only seemed to intensify. Everywhere I went, I was on high alert, constantly scanning my surroundings for any signs of danger. The nightmares continued, each one more vivid and terrifying than the last. In my dreams, the clowns would taunt me, chasing me through twisted, nightmarish landscapes. I felt like I was losing my grip on reality, like I was trapped in a never-ending nightmare. One day, I received a phone call from an unknown number. When I answered, all I could hear was a distorted voice laughing on the other end. I knew then that I was being targeted by the very same creepy clowns that had been terrorizing people in the streets. I tried to tell the police about what was happening to me, but they didn't seem to take me seriously. They dismissed my claims as paranoia and told me that there was nothing they could do unless I had proof. So I decided to take matters into my own hands. I started carrying a small camera with me everywhere I went, hoping to catch any evidence of the clown's activities. One night, I was walking home from work when I saw a group of clowns standing at the end of the street. They were all wearing dark, twisted makeup and carrying weapons. I knew then that I had to act fast. I pulled out my camera and started recording as I walked towards them. They started to close in on me, their laughter filling the air. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as I prepared for the worst. Suddenly, one of the clowns lunged towards me, swinging a baseball bat. I dodged out of the way just in time, and the clown stumbled past me. I took that opportunity to run as fast as I could, with the clowns hot on my heels. I didn't stop running until I reached the safety of my apartment. As soon as I got inside, I locked the door and started reviewing the footage on my camera. I was horrified by what I saw. The clowns had been watching me for weeks, gathering outside my workplace and my apartment. I took the footage to the police, and this time they finally took me seriously. They launched an investigation, and eventually, they were able to catch the clowns and bring them to justice. But even with the clowns behind bars, my fear never truly went away. The memories of those terrifying nights stayed with me, haunting me long after the ordeal was over. I learned that sometimes the things we fear the most are not just figments of our imagination, they can be very real and very dangerous. And sometimes, the only way to overcome our fears is to face them head-on, even if it means putting ourselves in harm's way. I used to love clowns. I loved their brightly colored outfits, their big red noses, and their goofy antics that always made me laugh. But now, every time I see a clown, I feel a shiver run down my spine. It all started a few years ago, when I was working at a carnival. I was hired to work at the carnival for the summer, and my job was to dress up as a clown and entertain the children. At first, I was excited. I loved the idea of making kids smile and laugh. But soon, I began to notice that there was something strange about the other clowns. They never took off their makeup, even when they weren't performing. They always wore their bright, colorful outfits, even when they were off the clock. And they never spoke to anyone who wasn't a clown. I thought it was just a quirk of the job, so I didn't think much of it. But one night, after the carnival had closed and everyone had gone home, I was walking back to my car when I heard a noise behind me. I turned around, and there was a clown standing there, watching me. I recognized him as one of the clowns I worked with, but something was different about him. His eyes were dark and empty, and his smile was twisted and sinister. I tried to back away, but he just stood there, staring at me. Then, he lunged at me, his long, spindly fingers reaching for my throat. I screamed and ran as fast as I could, but he was right behind me. I could hear his ragged breathing and his low, guttural laughter. I managed to get to my car and slammed the door shut, locking it behind me. But the clown just stood outside my car, tapping on the window with his gloved hand. I could see his dark, empty eyes staring at me through the glass. After that night, I quit my job at the carnival and tried to put it all behind me. But the memory of that clown haunted me. I started seeing clowns everywhere I went, on billboards, in movies, even in my dreams. I thought I was going crazy, until one night, I woke up to find a clown standing at the foot of my bed. His makeup was smeared and his costume was torn, but I could still recognize him as the same clown who had chased me through the carnival. He just stood there, watching me with his dark, empty eyes. I tried to scream, but no sound would come out. And then, he reached out and touched me with his gloved hand. That's when I knew I wasn't crazy, the clowns were real, and they were coming for me. I tried to run, but they were everywhere, surrounding me with their sinister grins and their long, spindly fingers. I don't know how I managed to escape, but somehow, I did. I moved to a new town, changed my name, and tried to forget about the clowns. But every once in a while, I still see them, lurking in the shadows, waiting for their chance to strike. I used to love clowns. But now, I fear them more than anything in the world. I never used to be afraid of clowns. In fact, when I was a kid, I loved going to the circus and watching the clowns perform. But that all changed one night, when I was walking home from a friend's house. It was late at night, and the streets were deserted. I had my headphones on, lost in my own world, when I saw something out of the corner of my eye. It was a clown, standing in the shadows, watching me. At first, I thought it was just someone dressed up for a costume party or a prank. But as I got closer, I could see that something was off about this clown. His makeup was smudged, his costume torn and dirty. His eyes were dark and lifeless, and his smile was twisted into a grotesque grin. I tried to walk past him, but he stepped out in front of me, blocking my path. He didn't say anything, just stood there, staring at me with those dark, empty eyes. I tried to back away, but he kept following me, his footsteps echoing in the silence. I could hear his laughter, low and sinister, like he was enjoying my fear. I ran as fast as I could, but he was always there, right behind me, his laughter growing louder and more menacing with each passing moment. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, my breath coming in short gasps. Finally, I stumbled and fell to the ground. The clown loomed over me, his face inches from mine. I could smell the stench of his breath, like rotten eggs and decay. And then he spoke, his voice low and raspy. "You shouldn't have come this way, my friend," he said. "You've made a terrible mistake." I tried to scream, but my throat was dry and scratchy. The clown reached down and grabbed my arm, pulling me to my feet. He led me through the empty streets, his grip like a vice on my wrist. We walked for what felt like hours, the clown never once releasing his grip on me. I could feel my fear growing with each passing moment, like a heavy weight pressing down on my chest. Finally, we arrived at a deserted building, its windows boarded up and its walls covered in graffiti. The clown led me inside, down a dark, musty hallway. As we walked, I could hear the sounds of other clowns laughing and whispering in the shadows. I could see their dark shapes moving in the corner of my eye, but whenever I turned to face them, they vanished into thin air. Finally, we reached a door at the end of the hallway. The clown pushed it open, and we stepped inside. The room was dimly lit, the walls covered in strange symbols and markings. In the center of the room stood a strange, twisted figure, its body covered in a tattered cloak. It was like nothing I had ever seen before, and its presence filled me with a sense of unease. The clown led me forward, until I was standing right in front of the figure. Its eyes glowed red in the dim light, and I could feel its power radiating off of it. And then, suddenly, the clown released his grip on me and vanished into the shadows. I was alone with the figure, and I knew then that I was in grave danger. I tried to run, but it was like I was rooted to the spot. The figure reached out and touched my forehead, and I felt a jolt of electricity shoot through my body. And then, everything went black. When I woke up, I was back in my own bed, with no memory of how I had gotten there. But the fear lingered, like a dark cloud hanging over me. I couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible had happened to me, something that I couldn't remember. Over the next few days, I became increasingly paranoid. Everywhere I went, I felt like I was being watched. Every shadow seemed to contain a lurking figure, waiting to pounce. And then, one night, I saw the clown again. He was standing outside my window, his twisted grin illuminated by the moonlight. I screamed and backed away, but he just stood there, watching me with those dark, empty eyes. And then, just like before, he vanished into the night. From that moment on, the clown became a constant presence in my life. I would see him on the street, lurking in the shadows. I would hear his laughter in my dreams, a low, sinister sound that would wake me up in a cold sweat. I tried to tell myself that I was just imagining things, that the clown was just a figment of my overactive imagination. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. The clown was real, and he was coming for me. One night, I decided that I had had enough. I went out into the streets, determined to confront the clown and put an end to this nightmare once and for all. I searched for hours, but I couldn't find him. And then, just as I was about to give up, I saw him. He was standing on the other side of the street, watching me with those dark, empty eyes. I crossed the street and walked right up to him. He didn't move, didn't say anything. He just stood there, watching me with that twisted grin on his face. And then, without warning, he lunged at me. I tried to run, but he was too fast. He grabbed me by the neck and pulled me close. And then, I saw his true face. Beneath the layers of makeup and the twisted grin, I saw the face of a demon. Its eyes glowed with a malevolent light, and its breath was like the stench of death itself. I screamed and struggled, but it was no use. The demon clown had me in its grip, and it was dragging me down into the depths of hell. I woke up in a cold sweat, my heart pounding in my chest. It was just a dream, I told myself. Just a nightmare. But deep down, I knew that it was more than that. The clown was still out there, watching me, waiting for his next opportunity to strike. And I knew that I would never be safe again, as long as the demon clown was out there, lurking in the shadows. After that terrifying encounter, I became increasingly paranoid. I was constantly looking over my shoulder, jumping at every sound and shadow. I knew that the demon clown was still out there, watching me, waiting for his chance to strike again. I tried to convince myself that it was just a hallucination or a nightmare, but deep down, I knew the truth. The clown was real, and he was after me. I started avoiding public places and crowded areas, fearing that he might be lurking among the crowd. I even stopped going to work, afraid that he might be waiting for me there. My life became a never-ending cycle of fear and anxiety. Every time I closed my eyes, I would see his twisted grin and those glowing eyes staring back at me. One day, I decided that I couldn't live like this anymore. I had to face my fears and find a way to stop the clown once and for all. I spent weeks researching about demon clowns and the occult, trying to find a way to defeat him. And finally, I found a ritual that claimed to banish evil spirits back to the depths of hell. I gathered all the necessary ingredients and performed the ritual in my apartment. I lit candles and drew ancient symbols on the walls, reciting incantations from an ancient book. And then, I felt a cold breeze in the room. The candles flickered and went out, and I heard a low growl coming from the shadows. Suddenly, I saw the clown's twisted grin in the darkness. He was standing right in front of me, his eyes glowing with a malevolent light. I felt a surge of fear and desperation, but I kept reciting the incantations, hoping that it would be enough to banish the demon clown back to hell. And then, something amazing happened. The clown started to shrink and fade away, as if he was being sucked back into some kind of vortex. And just like that, he was gone. I collapsed to the ground, exhausted and relieved. It was finally over. The demon clown was banished back to the depths of hell, and I was safe once again. But even though the clown was gone, the memories and the fear lingered on. I knew that I would never be able to forget that twisted grin and those glowing eyes, haunting me for the rest of my life.